Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jara Balava Girvarirani Gopi Jara Balava Girvarirani Yasorinandana Braja Janaranjana Yasorinandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jara Balava Girvarirani Gopi Jara Balava Girvarirani Yasorinandana Braja Janaranjana Yasorinandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivirajikacharya Astodhara Sadashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivirajikacharya Astodhara Sadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavadin Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गिराधा शिवासि गौर भक्तनंद की जाय। श्री श्री राधे कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जाय। वृंदावन धाम की जाय। मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जाय। गंगा माई की जाय। जमुना माई की जाय। तुलसी देवी की जाय। भक्ति देवी की जाय। हरि नाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जाय। Brihat Padanga ki jai. Shri Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Shri Shri Kishore Kishore ki jai. Shri Jagannath Shri Baladev Srimati Subhadra ki jai. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the Summa devotees. All glories to Summa devotees. All glories to Summa devotees. All glories, Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Shri Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Chicago Yatra ki jai, Vaishnav Sangha ki jai. Va Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Michani Namaste Shashini Vasta Tastani. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29. In chapters entitled Talks Between Narada and King Prachinabarhi, text number 57. And I was also asked to read 58 and 59. I'm going to partly surrender and read 58. Because they kind of go together with 60 more, but just because they're going to do, Badri's going to do 60 tomorrow, so I'll read 58. Samshayaha atra tu me vipra sanchinaha tatkrita mahan rishayaha api hi muyanti yatra na indriya vrittayaha samshayotra tu me vipra sanchinas krito mahan rishayo pihiyu muyanti yatra nendriya vrittayaha samshayotra tu me vipra sanchinas krito mahan rishayo pihi muyanti yatra nendriya vrittayaha samshayotra tu me vipra sanchinas krito mahan rishayo pihi muyanti yatra nendriya vrittayaha. Please chant. Word meanings: samshayaha, doubt; atra, here; tu, but; me, my; vipra, O Brahmana; sanchinaha, cleared; tatkritaha, done by that; mahan, very great; rishaya, the great sages; api, even; he, certainly; muyanti, are bewildered; yatra, where; na, not; indriya, of the senses; vritayaha, activities. Translation: My dear Brahmana, there are contradictions between your instructions and those of my spiritual teachers who engaged me in fruitive activities. I now can understand the distinction between devotional service, knowledge, and renunciation. I had some doubts about them, but you have now very kindly dissipated all these doubts. I can now understand how even the great sages are bewildered by the real purpose of life. Of course, there is no question of sense gratification. So it's a little long, but please repeat. My dear Brahmana, there are contradictions between your instructions and those of my spiritual teachers who engaged me in fruitive activities. I now can understand the distinction between devotional service, knowledge, and renunciation. I had some doubts about them, but you have now very kindly dissipated all these doubts. I can now understand how even the great sages are bewildered by the real purpose of life. Of course, there's no question of sense gratification. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. King Barhishman was engaged in different types of sacrifice for elevation to the heavenly planets. People generally are attracted by these activities, and very rarely is a person attracted to devotional service, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms. Unless one is very, very fortunate, he does not take to devotional service. Even the so-called learned Vedic scholars are bewildered by devotional service. They are generally attracted to the rituals for sense gratification. In devotional service, there is no sense gratification, but only transcendental loving service to the Lord. Consequently, the so-called priests engaged in sense gratification do not very much like devotional service. The Brahmanas, the priests, have been against this Krishna consciousness movement since it began with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started this movement, the priestly class lodged complaints to the Qazi, the magistrate of the Mohammedan government. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to lead a civil disobedience movement against the propaganda of the so-called followers of Vedic principles. These people are described as karma jadi smartas, which indicates that they are priests engaged in ritualistic ceremonies. It is here stated that such people become bewildered, rishayo pihi muyanti. To save oneself from the hands of these karma jadi smartas, one should strictly follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarva dharman parityagya mammekam sharanam raja aham tvam sava papebhyo mokshayishami ma shuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. Bhagavad Gita 1866. And the next verse is very short, so I'll just read this one, 58. Kamadi arahabte yena puman iha vihaya tam amutran yena dehena jushtani sa yad ashnute. Translation: the results of whatever a living entity does in this life are enjoyed in the next life. Purport. A person generally does not know how one body is linked with another body. How is it possible that one suffers or enjoys the results of activities in this body and yet another body in the next life? This is a question the king wants Narada Muni to answer. How may one have a human body in this life and not have a human body in the next? Even great philosophers and scientists cannot account for the transferal of karma from one body to another. As we experience, every individual soul has an individual body, and one person's activities or one body's activities are not enjoyed or suffered by another body or another person. The question is how the activities of one body are suffered or enjoyed in the next. Om Gyanatamyanda Shajanat Anjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umnitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Tetanvano Bishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here we are continuing Narada Muni's lengthy instructions to the king. In the beginning of this chapter, it's interesting. King Prachinabarhi said, "My dear Lord," saying to Narada, "we," meaning I, "could not appreciate completely the purport of your allegorical story of King Paranjan. Actually, those who are perfect in spiritual knowledge can understand, but for us who are overly attached to fruitive activities, to realize the purpose of your story is very difficult." So, this is actually a relatively long section of the Bhagavatam. The conversation between Narada Muni and the king began in chapter 24 and continues through 25, through 26, through 27, through 28, all of which are fairly lengthy chapters. It's well over 100 pages, about 104, actually 411, and we are now on page, going to be going through 750. So it's lengthy section. And at the beginning of this chapter, even though Narada's been instructing him for so long, he still says, "I don't get it. I don't understand. Can you please explain it a little more?" So that in itself is a significant point because it's underlying our process of Shravanam Kirtanam. That the king was bewildered, and he's been given so many instructions and he has so many misconceptions, and now he's achieved the association of a very elevated spiritual teacher, spiritual master, Narada Muni himself, and he's beginning this chapter by saying, "I still don't get it. I'm not completely understanding." But at this verse, now text 57, he is saying, "Oh, now I get it." So demonstrating this process of repeated hearing, if we just go on hearing, and we've all had experience like that. Sometimes when we first meet devotees of Krishna and they say just a few things and something kind of clicks, and we realize, oh, that makes so much sense, and we see a few pieces of the puzzle of life kind of fit together, and we see things a little bit more clearly. And other times we may hear a certain aspect of our philosophy again and again and again and again and again, and one day you're sitting in class or you're reading one of Prabhupada's books or listening to a lecture, and all of a sudden the light kind of goes on and you go, "Oh, that's what they meant." Or sometimes you go out in the world and you see something and then you see, "Oh yeah, that's what Narada Muni was talking about, or Prabhupada was talking about, or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was talking about, or my guru was talking about, or the temple president was talking about. Oh, now I get it." So that is King Prachinabarhi's experience here. He's saying, "Okay, now I get it. I'm starting to understand through this process of repeated hearing." And then, in this particular verse, he says in yesterday's verse, "I've been hearing with great attention, And considering, I've come to a conclusion. What's the conclusion? He kind of comes to two conclusions. One is that his activities have been wrong. And the other conclusion is a little more ordinary in one sense. He's basically saying, hey, I've been cheated. I get it now. I've been cheated. These people have been telling me all these different things for so many days or years or months, and I've been engaged in so many activities, but they were actually cheating me because they didn't really know. So they were giving me bad information. Like they say sometimes, I got a bad rap, right? They sent me the wrong way. Just like those of us who have been to India know, if you're asking directions, you have to be very careful. Because the culture as such is considered impolite to say you don't know. If someone needs help, you have to try to offer your help. So even if you don't know, someone says, which way is it to the train station? And you go, that way. Even if you don't know, because you're trying to be polite. So if you're a pedestrian in India or with a taxi driver who doesn't know, you know you have to ask at least 3 people. And if 3 in a row say that way, pretty good chance it's the right way. But odds are you're going to go about 100 yards and the next person's going to say it's that way. So you have to kind of realize that not everybody has perfect knowledge. It requires a little bit of awareness, kind of the rules, kind of the ground rules. So here, he's saying that my teachers didn't know, and actually they cheated me. And Prabhupada explains in this purport and yesterday's purport, and in other places throughout the dialogue, that his teachers were engaging him in different types of rituals and activities meant to bring about fruitive activities. And Narada is telling the king that actually you're a fool. He's been telling him repeatedly, you're a fool. First he couldn't tell him that. He told him through the allegory. He couldn't directly come out. He said, there was once this king, and he was doing all these things. And in the ultimate sense, he was a fool. And Narada, or the king came back, the real king said, I don't understand that. So he told the whole story again. And in this chapter he says, I'm still not quite sure I understand it. So he just tells him directly, here's the purport. I told you the story twice. Now here's the actual philosophical insight. Now he gets it. And he says, I've been cheated. And Narada says, yeah, you're a fool. Because you've engaged in activities without knowing what's the result of them. And therefore in the second verse I read, the king is talking about whatever results the living entity does, they're enjoyed or suffered in the next life. So he's starting to get the sense it's just a cycle, and the purpose is not to perpetuate the cycle, but to get out of the cycle. So Narada is saying you didn't understand that everything you're doing was temporary, 1, and mixed happiness and distress, and 2, you didn't really understand the real opportunity you had. Not only were you accepting something less important without knowing the result, more importantly, you missed the real opportunity that was there in your human form of life. And it reminded me of Dhruva Maharaj's prayers and comments in the Bhagavatam when he says, after realizing the Lord, he explained, I was looking for broken glass, but I found a diamond. I found something of immense value. I was looking for the wrong thing. So King Prachinabarhi, he is starting to have that same realization. I was going after foolish, less important things, and you have now woken me up. So as Prabhupada talks about how the king was being misled, and then he brings it up to the contemporary time. It says, and so many people these days are being misdirected by different types of ritualistic activities. And we can see that the whole world is full of people doing rituals. Generally, they don't think of themselves like that. A lot of times Prabhupada will talk about how everyone is worshiping different types of demigods. And sometimes I always think, well, outside of India, who's worshiping different demigods? If you say that to a typical American, oh, you're worshiping demigods, they'll go, what are you talking about? I'm not worshiping any demigods. I'm going to work. And of course, when they get to work, the boss says, you're late. And they go, I'm so sorry, sir. They bow several times. And then they wait for their marching orders, and they offer various pujas during the day to their boss or their professors or whatever. And in this way, they're worshiping different demigods, different powerful beings. They're offering different types of worship. So here, within this concepts of ritual, too, we see that people all over the world are very much engaged in ritual. I went online to look up the definition of ritual. I'm kind of old school person. I'm used to looking through a book, but I went online. After about 6 minutes of advertising, I did find a few very brief definitions of what they say a ritual is. And ritual, generally, it's understood some type of ceremony within a religious context, different prescribed procedures. They talk about family rituals. We all have different kind of family rituals when you're growing up, things you did on Saturday morning or Sunday morning or Friday night or Monday morning or whenever it was, vacation rituals, loading the car type of rituals, unloading the car, different rituals. As I was reading through these, I was thinking it's the same issue that is being discussed by Narada, because all the definitions of ritual, none of them said what the purpose of it was. I was looking for like a little longer definition, a series of ceremonial or prescribed activities that do what? And I looked in a few different pages, and I'm sure it's there if you look deeper, but on the superficial, quick definitions you get online, which is where most people go for their philosophical input these days, just one line, 2 lines explanations. Until I flipped onto the definition of rituals from the sociologist dictionary. And there they say rituals are to relieve anxiety. So that was interesting. People have different rituals to relieve anxieties. And when I first looked at this book, I was thinking back about some of the foolish rituals that I used to be involved in. I remember, family rituals. Every year you got out we'd go out and buy the Christmas tree. Very secular family, but you had to have a Christmas tree. And you got to open the boxes, and you always did it in the evening, and you did them in a certain way, and you put the lights on first, and then you put this on, and then you didn't do it another way, because that was an aparad. It had to go just the right way. And the little manger scene went there. And then you had a big party and ate a lot of horrible things and drank a lot of horrible things and give a lot of presents and Merry Christmas. And I remember as a young person in high school coming somehow by Krishna's grace to start asking this question, what's the purpose of this ritual? Is there any purpose to this? And, the answer was generally, well, yeah, because it's what we do as a family. This is how we share our time together. And we put the tree up, and we put the tinsel second, we put the lantern, and we always take it down. We wait until the tree's dried, and, you can't take it down too soon, and we repack the boxes. My father had a ritual every year. He would write himself a note for next year, Merry Christmas, whatever the next year was. So his boxes of Christmas decorations said, Merry Christmas 64, 65, 66, 67, 68. That was his ritual. But I started asking, well, what's the purpose of this ritual? And at a certain point in time, I started going to church. Nobody else went to church. That was weird for my family. Why do you want to go to church? It's Christmas, for crying out loud. Well, I was hearing it. One devotee recently was saying that, I can't remember the context, but going home at Christmas and getting in some discussion after he became a devotee with some family members, and his mother saying, for crying out loud, it's Christmas. Do we have to talk about religion? So people have these different types of rituals, but they don't necessarily ask. And a lot of people, they would say, we don't really have a ritual, but they do. They drive home the same way, they go to work the same way, they get in their desk and they do this the same way, because according to the sociologist, it relieves anxiety. Sometimes people, when they're really stressed out, people just say, well, just go through just keep going on with the ordinary routine in life. One of my family members, their routine is to turn on the television all day long. You walk in the house, there's nobody watching it, but it's just going. And if you turn it off, it's like there's anxiety. So people have their different ways, the different rituals they perform, and some are for religious purposes. People are thinking there'll be some fruitive or benefit down the road, but generally people don't ask, what's the real result of this ritual? And the main ritual for most people is you go to work 9 to 5 every day, and you try to make some money to go to the mall and to buy the things that you think you need, or whatever the television tells you the night before that you need. That becomes people's ritual. Their lives, as we know, in modern society especially, is so focused around this ritual of consumption and just buy. But not just our Vedic culture, but other philosophically oriented cultures say, well, that's not very good. The Greek adage is there that an unexamined life is not worth living. It's not even worth living if you don't stop and think, what's the purpose of all these different rituals I'm doing? So that's what Narada is saying. What's the result, my dear king, of what you're getting? And he's starting to sink in. And I was thinking that the same question is there with Krishna, with his Govardhan Leela, when he asked his father and the other elder residents of Vrindavan, what's the purpose of this yajna, father? What are you really doing this for? And he gives him a couple answers, some ritualistic answers in a sense, and then Krishna says, but that's not really who we depend upon. That's not really a good use. Let's do something different than that. So, today people, they don't know, just like the people that were teaching the king, they don't know what the real purpose of life is. They don't understand about the need for spiritual awakening. Therefore, they're directing people towards less important activities, and they're misleading people. And in one sense, in the ultimate sense, they're cheating people. That Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter, he talks about this in the context of the Vedas, where he says, I put the mark in the wrong place. Give me just a second. Here it is. Text. Let's see. 243. Yes. Beginning with 243. Men of small knowledge are very much attracted to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to the heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say there's nothing more than this. People say that there's nothing more than that. Get some power, get some opulent life, elevation in the heavenly planets. And we see that oftentimes when we speak to people today, and they'll tell us, what are you doing with yourself? Don't you know there's nothing more than sense gratification and you're missing out? But we say, don't you know there's something more than sense gratification and you're missing out? Krishna explains why are they thinking like that? Why do they think there's nothing else? In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence and who are bewildered by such things. They're bewildered by these things. The resolute determination for devotional service, or even inquiry beyond these things, does not take place. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature, or Arjuna. Become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So, Krishna is making this point also because people don't know. They think these different rituals they're engaged in, this is the all-in-all, but that actually one who has higher knowledge transcends these. Later in the 9th chapter, he returns to this concept of ritual. He says, it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajur Vedas. I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the dearmost friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place, and the eternal seed. Then he says, those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of such sinful reactions, they take birth on higher planets where they enjoy godly delights. When they enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, they only ultimately achieve repeated birth and death. But those who worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. And there's one verse I skipped over by mistake where he says, those who perform these different rituals, they do so with an improper understanding. They really don't understand what the purpose behind of it is. So this is the message of Narada Muni and Srila Prabhupada, and it's the message of Lord Chaitanya, it's the message of Krishna as we're reading, and the same message is there in the Western traditions. It was a message of Jesus, the message of Muhammad. Don't get stuck in these rituals for either gross materialistic or some type of subtle or heavenly promises or benefits, but understand the human form of life is meant for self-realization. But as Prabhupada points out in the purport, because people are bewildered, they resist. They resist that, and even among the priestly class, he says the priests and the brahmanas, they become angry and they become threatened. And we see that in the history of our movement. Prabhupada's talking about Lord Chaitanya and the resistance that came from the caste brahmanas, from others who went to, interestingly, went to a secular, not a secular, but went to a government based on a different set of religious principles and said, come and get our guys. We need you outsiders to come and get our guys because they're not really doing what they're supposed to do. They're threatening our position. If this mantra is taught to all the people in the streets, if everyone is taught that the goal is just bhakti and there's no discrimination and you don't have to go through all these ritualistic activities, what's our job? What's our position? Because they're all coming to us to perform these different types of pujas and rituals, and if there's no rituals necessary, well then the whole social order is upset. And we're the top of the social order, so if you're telling people they don't need to go through us, we're no longer on top of the social order. Crush them. Stop them. As our Prabhupada says, they feel threatened. They feel threatened by devotional service. Modern day parallel, and it's not, I wouldn't want to have it be too simplistically interpreted, but I had a phone call just a few days ago. I didn't even realize this. I haven't heard anything more about it, but apparently, according to a reporter that called me, we just lost the latest round of our battle to keep the LAX airport open for book distribution. I don't know how far it is or how many other options we have, if any or if many. But a reporter called me and said, what's your comment on this? And I told her, I said, well, you know, airports are the streets of the modern society. You know, the whole argument years ago with that U.S. Supreme Court case was that airport's a separate environment and there's no protected First Amendment freedoms in an airport. But we know these days, I said, you know, in an airport there's restaurants and there's shops and there's bars and there's meeting places and you can rent office space in airports and you can have, there's playgrounds inside. It's a street. It's the street of the modern day, but still, they interpret, no, you can talk to people about God. You can stand in one place for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, a day, 2 days, 3 days a week, 7 days, a month. We can't interfere with your constitutional right. However, if you interrupt that 7-day conversation and say, excuse me, could you give a donation for this book? That you're not allowed to do. It's ridiculous. And as I was flying, I tore it out. I was flipping through the airplane magazine on the way here. I tore it out. There was an advertisement for the Miami International Airport. And in big print it said, it's not an airport, or else it's not, I didn't memorize it, it's not just an airport, it's a mall. So what's a mall? You know, it's the city center. So in a similar way, and again, you can't take the parallel too far, the analogy too far, but people are thinking, well, what's the social contribution of this? You're really kind of disturbing our rituals. We've got it. Why are you upsetting our rituals? And we don't really want to upset their rituals. We want to help them understand what's the purpose of ritual. What's the benefit of ritual? We're not opposed to ritual. We have rituals. You know, somebody came and gave me a nice flower garland, and you know, the younger people are more flexible people sitting on the floor because that's kind of what we do. It's kind of a ritual. And some of us that are more in touch with the reality of the aging body, we're sitting in chairs. That's kind of a ritual. And, you know, we go through our different kind of rituals. And, you know, Mirage has his pill rituals, and I have my, every month or so, I tell myself I have to take that yoga class, again, ritual. And I go once or twice and fail miserably, and a month later I go through the ritual. We have these different rituals for our bodies, for our minds, for our social needs, for our family needs. And those things are good. They bring about social order. We have red light rituals. If there were no red light rituals, we'd all be dead. There was no red light rituals, and we have policeman rituals, and we have tax paying rituals. There are social norms and behaviors and different kind of ceremonies. And the king, all along these 4 or 5 chapters, is saying, Bernard, I'm doing my rituals. Thank you for instructions, but I'm already engaged. I'm doing fine. I'm okay. You're okay too, but I'm okay. Because I heard from my teachers. And Narada keeps telling him this story, but you don't understand. You see the end result with this king? They all came, he shot a lot of animals, chanted a few mantras ahead of time, whatever he did, but in the end they came back and got him. Hello? And he keeps saying, I don't quite get it. And he comes at him from another angle. I don't quite get it. Then he comes from another angle. And then in this he goes, hey, I get it. I was misled. I was cheated. So like the question, then what to do? And like Narada, first of all, for ourselves, we have to go on repeatedly hearing. Because we're hearing so many things from so many sources in this world. And the vast majority of those say sense gratification is fine. Everybody's enjoying life. Everybody's happy. Everything's great. And then occasionally, some of us more than others, you scan an occasional headline that says, everything's great except the European economy may crash any minute. But it's okay. Don't worry about it. We just have to buy more things to bring up the economy. And then we'll be okay. Everything will be fine. Etc. So many examples of that. And I remember when I was in college and I studied social science, political theory, things like that, and one really famous author of so many books would come and give us a lecture, and he would say the way to solve the urban crisis or this crisis is you have to do A, B, C, D, and E. And you take all the notes down and you think, okay, I got it, good. Now I'm understanding what this class is all about. And then a week later they bring another illustrious author of 12 books, and he would say the one thing we can't do is A, B, C, D, and E. What we really need to do is F, Q, and Z. You think, whoa, these people, do you really know? Are you sure? And then we see the whole, political discourse and the whole polarity that's there, the conflicts that's there within American society these days, different arguments about how the society should be organized and what to do with the tax structure and this and that. But as Prabhupada's pointed out here, ultimately it all boils down to, so you think that if you take the money and distribute it more equally so that those of the lower economic and social strata can have more sense gratification as much as the wealthier people, that everybody be happy. Okay. And you think that if you can, and I'm simplifying, I live in Washington, D.C., so you get affected by these things. And you guys think that if you just create an environment so that the rich people can get really, really rich, then automatically everybody else is going to benefit by that. And that way, they're going to have more sense gratification. And you're fighting with each other and spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to get power, like Krishna said, trying to get power to facilitate the process you think that's going to get more sense gratification. And basically they'll go, yes. But then we, following the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya and Narada Muni, say, but you're just trying to get sense gratification. That won't make you happy. And the general reaction is, whoa, wait a minute. It's one thing to say you have a different opinion on how to get sense gratification, but you're challenging the underlying principles of modern society. And of my whole life and of everything I'm trying to do and of everything I studied and everything that I do, and I don't know if I like that. And occasionally they say things like, we don't want you people to speak in Russia, where they say, this is terrorist. My God, do you realize what's going to happen to the world if people read this book? We're trying to catch up with the Americans or whoever they're trying to catch up with now. And this book is going to discourage people. Right? Who was it? Was it Bosch that went to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and said, we've got a free India, and you're converting all these young men. You're taking all these young men. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, they're just a few skinny people. Leave them alone. They can't. What can they do? In this way, because there was this whole revolutionary spirit through political means and social means. And Of course, sometimes those things can be beneficial, but the idea is that underlying this instruction to Narada Muni, which is, you're going through your rituals, you have a little bit of an understanding of religious practice, but what's the ultimate purpose? So as devotees, we have this faith, and we're trying to apply it in our own lives and share it with other people, that human form of life is meant to, you can follow your different social customs, and there's so many different cultures in the world, and there's so many different types of, even you go to within our movement, Italian Hare Krishnas, they've got a certain rasa. It's a very nice rasa. If you haven't experienced the Italian rasa, you should, maybe don't stop on your way back to Godhead, but if you have a chance to stop on your way to India someday or something, it's a very special rasa the Italians have. And different devotees have different kind of rasas and different nuances, even within our own communities. But the essential idea is put Krishna in the middle, how to Krishnaize everything. How can we do your holidays, which should be holy days, how do you spiritualize them? We want to help people spiritualize them so that people can gradually awaken to the point that they, as we all have, at some point saying, hey, actually, I was being cheated. I was being sent down this path. I have to look at it. You look at your own family traditions. So what was, in fact, I was speaking with a young Indian man the other day. He was speaking to a young group of kind of up-and-coming Indian kid leaders. And he was telling to them, and I sat there thinking, wow, this guy's a devotee. He doesn't know it yet. But he was saying to this group of about 50, 60 kids, so what are you going to do with your life? You're going to go to school, you're going to get education, so you can get a good job, so you can get a good house, so you can raise some kids, so they can get an education, so they can raise some kids, so they can get And I was saying, boy, hello? Can I interrupt this talk to tell you that this is Krishna consciousness, thank you very much. But to say, he was understanding the futility of it all. So people gradually can understand the futility of it all and start asking, what is the purpose and what types of actions will really benefit me? To be able to say to people, hey, we know you like to eat, and we know you want to get together with your family and have a lovely meal, and you want to make a big holiday out of it. But, when you kill, whatever they do, 500 million turkeys or something, that's not a good thing to do. That's what Narada was saying. You've got your rituals, but you killed all these animals. You're going to suffer for that. Or you have your different rituals. You like to be together with your friends and have a good time and eat, drink, and be merry. But when you take different intoxicants, there's karma for that. You can have great parties and you don't have to go home and throw up when it's all over. You don't have to wake up the next day and not know who you are and where you were and worry, as the unfortunate, degraded people of this age do, how many diseases you might have contacted at your so-called good time. And you don't have to wake up wondering, how many more times can I do this because I got such a headache, I just want to die. Or wondering, how can I get to work and will I get fired? These are the kind of things people, the day-to-day ordinary people, these are the kind of things that they're faced with. Or even people that are relatively successful. So much anxiety. I remember, Seen Vaishya, I was thinking about book distribution. As a young, I don't know how it is these days, I haven't been in parking lots for years. But we kind of knew, don't waste your time talking to anybody driving a Volvo. Now maybe that's changed. But Volvo people, they bought the car because it makes you safe. Right? It's got the thick doors, it's got the front end. Remember that? It's like it's a safe car. And you walk up to somebody Volvo, you go, excuse me, they go, because their whole thing is how to be safe. I just want to be safe. That's the value in life, is to be safe. And we're trying to say, excuse me, but you may drive home and get out of your car and slip and fall in your Volvo driveway because there's no guarantee. So please take this book. But their thing is, no, I want to be safe. I'm safe. The only thing I'm not safe is from you guys. And we're trying to say, hello. We're trying to play a little bit the role of the prophets in society that, stand out on the edge and go, not quite like those guys with the signs downtown. We're trying to be a little more sophisticated than that, But it's a similar message. My dear sir, my dear madam, have you thought about what's the ultimate result of what you're doing? What's it going to get you in the long run? What's the real purpose of it? And please read this literature, please chant this mantra, please associate with these people so you can learn. You can do exactly what you're doing now. As Prabhupada said, you don't have to give up your family, you don't have to give up your job, you don't have to give up your country, you don't have to give up your ashram. Just add Krishna. Put Krishna in the center, spiritualize your rituals, spiritualize your activities in such a way that they will actually bring a happier life now and in the future. Eat food that's not killing your brain, Enjoy the intoxicating association of devotees rather than things that are killing your brain. Eat food that doesn't necessarily destroy the planet and destroy the environment and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are wonderful instructions given by Narada to the king to help him awaken his love of Krishna. And we're very fortunate we have the opportunity to associate with Narada Muni and Srila Prabhupada and all the devotees and apply these same instructions to our own lives and try to, whatever capacity we possibly have, to try to also share that same message with other people. Please add Krishna to your life. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Maybe a couple of minutes for questions? 8:30 we quit? Is that right? Okay. Any questions or comments? Or
Thank you, Prabhu. Anutama Prabhu. Sometimes people, you're enlightening us about ritual, and sometimes people will say, well, my ritual is coming also from God, such as, killing animals. They'll say, well, it's my religion. So...
Do you have people actually tell you that? My religion is killing animals?
Well, they'll say, like, Muslims, for instance, they'll, they have halal meat, and then they believe that they have to kill the animal, and then, it's part of their ritual. Or in Christianity, they'll say that in the Old Testament they offered animal sacrifices. Of course, they don't offer, they just go to the drive-thru nowadays. They don't actually make an animal sacrifice, but they'll say, well, in the Bible it says it's our ritual to eat like this. Even though, of course, you can say.
I don't know that much about Islam. I know a little bit about Christianity. But I think that it really depends on how much of a conversation they're willing to have with you. It's a quick exchange in the middle of the street, and they say something like that. It's different than somebody you can sit down and have an ongoing conversation with. And Prabhupada would respond to things like that differently. Sometimes Prabhupada would say things like, forget the Scripture. I'm not talking about Scripture. Forget the Scripture. We don't care about Scripture. I'm talking logic. Because certain people would respond to that. So sometimes it can be, well, it may be it's okay in your Scripture, this or that, but are you aware of the fact that meat eating is one of the most destructive things you can do to the environment? You might be able to approach people from that angle. Lord Chaitanya instructed the Kazi, and he talked about meat eating but I don't know so much about the details. Vice, you can comment on that? He talked about actually meat eating is not the proper thing, even in your own Scripture. I don't recall the arguments that he used. And with the Christians, it's easier because it gets into thou shalt not kill, and there's a lot of Christian vegetarians, but some, they don't want to hear that. So that's why generally it's kind of add this to what you're doing, not so much radically change what they're doing now, unless they're very willing to hear.
Were you asking Lord Chaitanya's arguments?
Yes.
The Kazi said in your scriptures, the Vedas, there's provision for sacrificing animals. And then Lord Chaitanya said, but that's for giving them new life. And they bring them back to life. But in your system, you're killing your mother and father and eating them.
So they didn't discuss...
Is it good to kill your mother and father? Because they're supporting you, they're giving you sustenance.
Which is a logical argument. It's really kind of putting aside, okay, whatever your book says, does it make sense to kill your mother and father? Is that a sensitive person? Yeah. Okay. Yes, Prabhu? Thank you, Vaisheshika
Prabhu. As devotees, we know the purpose of our ritual is to attain Krishna Prema. And I was often thinking that even our chanting Hare Krishna is a type of ritual. It can be. And it seems there's a big difference between knowing the purpose and being aware of it, cognition of it. So oftentimes I feel personally that most of the time there isn't great cognition of the actual purpose. It's just knowledge of it, but not cognition of it. So therefore, the ritual of chanting Hare Krishna or coming to Mangalarti or even associating with devotees remains nothing but a ritual, just like what anyone else is doing without knowledge. I may have knowledge, but because I lack cognition, it is just more or less a dry ritual. No feeling is there. So I was wondering, how does one improve one's cognition of the actual purpose so that it becomes more than just a dry ritual?
Well, one thing is there's a story that I recall that I try to remember often. In the very early days of Prabhupada in New York, and it's explained, Gargamuni Prabhu didn't like to pay obeisances. The other devotees were just picking up on the idea you should bow down when you come in front of Prabhupada, or Swamiji as he was known in those days. And Prabhupada never said anything to him. And then one day Gargamuni said to Prabhupada, I'm not sure if he was Gargamuni then or still Greg or whatever his prior name was, but he said, Swamiji, the others like to bow down, but I'm not doing so. Is that okay? Or he said, but I don't feel like bowing down. And Prabhupada said, that's okay if you don't feel like it. Well, you should bow down and the feeling will come. So he was explaining to him that in the beginning we may take up so many different devotional practices without knowledge, without realization, without feeling, without understanding, but by just doing those, gradually we awaken the proper understanding. And we all have experience. Some days you come to Mangalartik and you kind of think intellectually, I'm so fortunate, so many people are sleeping, wasting their lives, here I am, what an amazing way to worship God. We sing and dance in the morning. This is a neat thing, at least sometimes we think like that. Other days you come to Mangalartik and you're standing in front of the deities and you just think, Krishna's so beautiful. Boy, is he beautiful. Look what he's wearing today, and Gaurnitai is smiling so nicely, and maybe more of an emotive type of response. Other days you come and you're kind of dull. And other days you might even come and your brain's going, what am I doing here? I can't do this again. Or, I can't believe so-and-so just said that to me when I walked in the door. How I can ever continue living in this place as long as he's here, I don't know if, etc. Our brain's all over the place. But through the process, devotional practices, that's what the sadhana is all about. But your point is particularly talking about the concept of intention, and awareness. And our understanding is, Prabhupada's taught us, and I'm sure I can't quote the particular Sanskrit words and analysis, but the idea that as we advance more in Krishna consciousness, we become more aware of what we're doing. And part of the results of our chanting, the process, is that we will awaken this awareness, so that, Prabhupada would talk about what he sees when he sees the deity. We challenge devotees, are you seeing Krishna? Don't think this is stone, because he's aware of that. And we're chanting Krishna's name, was it Rupa Goswami said, I want thousands of ears and tongues when I'm chanting. And for us sometimes it's, boy, when am I going to get done? I'm not going to make it to breakfast if I don't hurry up. So we should try to be as conscious as we can. And just like when we're chanting japa, when our mind goes off, we bring it back. So the same way in our other practices, we may be reading the scripture and we realize, I'm way over here, we got to come back. Wait, this is Narada Muni. Hello? Narada Muni is talking to you. Do you realize how fortunate you are? Let's focus. Let's take advantage. And then gradually, more that consciousness, that awareness, until as we become advanced in Krishna consciousness, we hear those words, we really understand them, take them to heart, and we realize this is Krishna. When we say Krishna, it is Krishna, and we will feel love for Krishna. And eventually, this life or in the future, realize what's our relationship with Krishna in that eternal capacity. Is that okay? Should I stop now? What should I do? A little bit more? Okay. Maybe here and then here. Okay.
Prabhu, we hear in Prahlad Maharaj's prayers that there's some people, if they get good counsel from their own intelligence, I believe, I'm not sure exactly how it translates, or even from conference with others, and no matter how many interventions happen, they'll still engage in chewing what's already been chewed. But at the same time, Prahlad Maharaj says, I don't want to go back to Godhead with all these fools and rascals who are just wasting their time and suffering. So where is the question of mercy for people like that? How did they receive mercy, considering that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the incarnation of mercy?
There are certain schools of Vaishnavism, most notably our Madhvite cousins, who, at least some of them, and they generally don't talk about this too much, but they have almost a Calvinistic or predetermination concept. There's certain souls that are saved, and there's certain souls that can't be. So one could interpret that statement of Narada Muni that, yes, those people, you just can't get to them. It's not possible. And they'll quote the verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, to those sinful persons, they were put by me again repeatedly, birth after birth, into the wombs of demoniac species of life. So they look at that one verse and say, yes. You know, there's, like the Christians have this, some people are predetermined that they're saved. You know, it's kind of a scary thing. It's like, you know, a mother sits around the table with her 6 kids. They all went to church. They all went to Sunday school. They all pray. They all read the Bible. And 2 of them are going to hell. And she doesn't know which ones. But you don't know. I mean, maybe not 2, maybe all 6, but, you know, whatever. She doesn't know. And it's kind of scary because you think, well, then you might as well sin like crazy because it's all determined. You're either going to go to hell or heaven one way or the other. So whatever you do. So I don't know the whole history of it, but I'm sure it's based on some analysis of, well, God is omniscient and knows Trikaligya, past, present, and future. Well, how can I possibly have anything to do with it? Because He knows whether I'm saved, you know, well, our terminology, whether I'll go back to Godhead or not. So somehow they go through that kind of logical fallacy. Whereas as followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's completely different. And the 6 Goswamis expanded on this extensively, the understanding of the mercy of the devotee, the mercy of the Lord, the mercy of the pure devotee. There's a beautiful purport in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says in a couple verses that don't disturb the minds of those who are ignorant, you know, let them go on doing what they're doing. And Prabhupada says, the Lord says don't disturb them, but the devotees understanding the purpose of the Lord, in other words, knowing that the Lord is giving them their free will. Okay, you want to be in the material world, I won't bother you. But what I really want is I want you to come back to me. That's His heart. I want every soul to come back to me. But He's giving them that free will. So Prabhupada says that devotee understanding the will of the Lord, he actually goes and approaches those people. That Krishna says don't do it because he knows. He kind of knows the Lord says this, but what He really means is that. It's a very interesting purport, manifesting the love that Krishna has. So that's our Vaishnava, Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, that Krishna, He never gives up on any of us, and He wants us all to come back to Godhead. And therefore He's willing to save, He's willing to uplift and benefit the most fallen. And therefore Lord Chaitanya, while in the most exalted Leela, His internal Leela of combined Radha and Krishna and expressing, you know, Krishna tasting Radharani's love for him, and that's the, you know, Maha Rasa, and yet He comes in that mood. How does He manifest? How does He express it? In part by coming to the most degraded time, to the most degraded people, and openly saying, come and chant and be elevated. And don't do different rituals advancing you to the heavenly planets. Don't even do different types of spiritual practice to go to Vaikuntha. Don't go to Vaikuntha. Come to Vrindavan. Come and become part of my most intimate Leela. The door is open. So that's the merciful Supreme Lord that we worship. Okay? Yes, Prabhu.
Here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that on the devotional service, there is no question of sense gratification. And to that point, can you please explain more, because I am not able to understand. And also, I want to add something. Srila Prabhupada wrote one letter to one devotee that the devotee was asking, getting clarification from Prabhupada. My mind is always going towards sense gratification. Then Prabhupada suggested you do deity worship. So that's that.
Yeah, it's a good question. Because Prabhupada says in the note, there's no question of sense gratification in Krishna consciousness. which is why a lot of people get scared away. And there's certain religious communities you can go to, and they will say, yes, if you worship God, what do they call it? The prosperity theology or something like that. If you're really getting God's mercy, then you're going to be rich. And if you're not rich, the only reason is because you're not getting God's mercy. So you just have to get God's mercy and you'll be rich. So Prabhupada is explaining that the consciousness of devotee is he or she does not accept anything or do anything for the purpose of their own gratification. Everything they're doing is to please Krishna. For a pure devotee. Now we're not so pure, so our motives, our actions are a little mixed. That's okay. We're making progress. But the goal is, and the consciousness of a purified soul is everything they do is for the pleasure of Krishna. And their happiness comes from serving Krishna in that loving mood. And to want something separate from Krishna is such a distraction and a disturbance, because their love for Krishna gives them such satisfaction. They see anything that's selfish or personally sensual as abominable. They want it. They want it to go away, because it's impeding, it's interfering, it's obstructing their real happiness, which is coming from their love. And they don't even care that's where their happiness comes from. They love Krishna. It's automatically that happiness is there. Now, in our stages of Krishna consciousness, it's a little different meaning. We're trying to also not seek sense gratification or personal gratification. But Krishna is so kind, and our founder Acharya is so kind, they've created so much wonderful gratification of our senses in connection with Krishna. So we're trying to connect everything with Krishna. So, I mean, how many people in the world, there's a lot of millionaires in the city of Chicago. And I'm not a millionaire, but I'm probably one of the few people in the city of Chicago today that had somebody put a beautiful garland of fresh flowers around my neck. Right? I mean, they don't bring that. I mean, Obama doesn't get a garland of flowers every morning. Romney doesn't get a garland of flowers every morning. You know, the president of General Motors doesn't get a garland. You know, Bill Gates probably doesn't even get a garland of fresh flowers. So, you know, and who eats food the way we do? So we have so much sense. Our senses are gratified looking at the beautiful form of the Lord, and they're gratified hearing philosophy, and our ears are pleased hearing the philosophy. And you know, we wear nice, generally cotton clothes. Most people in the world these days, you buy your very expensive plastic clothes. Like 15 years ago, when they had the Falkland Wars, remember that? That was those of you young ones remember that. Britain went to war with Argentina. It says a lot about the nature of empires that Britain had to go to war with Argentina, but anyway, they did. And one of the British ships got hit, and they realized a lot of the people on board, they died from the burns of their clothes that melted to their bodies, because everything was artificial, so they quit doing that. But you know, we wear nice clothes, silk and cotton, and we have so much sense gratification, but it's connected to Krishna. Is that okay? And the purpose is to help us advance in spiritual life. And we reject those things that are impediments. Okay? So Temple President Ji, we should stop here? Okay. Thank you all very much. Pleasure to be here. Very inspiring to see the nice temple. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Vaishnav Sangha ki jai. All of you ki jai. Haribo, Haribo.